And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing. I am one of your co-hosts, Mr. Lauren Gray from hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. With me is Mr. Robert Cole with Rock Cheetah, Mr. Edward StOnge from Flip2, and as our special guest co-host, Mr. Dan Wacksman from Outrigger in Hawaii, who, because there is darkness behind him, is being very generous with his time, considering that the sun has yet to rise. Mr. Dan, pleasure, and thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Aloha and good morning.
So, where to start from? We normally, during the show, we give you the first half hour and longer if you would like to go over and talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. Now, I send out a bunch of news things that we're going to jabber about whenever we decide to throw them in, or whether we decide to talk to them about them at all, or if you want to join us with those. But we wanted to see whether or not we could talk to you about the uniqueness of the market that you have been a professional in for quite a while. So I can either hand it over to you, or we can ask you probing and intriguing questions.
Well, don't we have 30 minutes of Dan's prepared remarks? I mean,
I got the PowerPoint right over here, so
exactly.
I never leave the office without a PowerPoint. So. Well, maybe to start it off, I could just give people a little background on some of the stuff that's going on in my world, and then I love the questions and topics that you had, so maybe we can just jump into those. But I think for those who are not familiar with Outrigger Hotels and Resorts, we're a Hawaii-based company that does both management and branding as well. We have about 40 properties under management. We were a 70-year-old family-owned company, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we have properties. We started in Hawaii, and the majority of our properties are still in Hawaii, but we made a push into Asia Pacific, the Indian Ocean, over the past 5 years or so. 5 or 10 years or so. We have a couple of properties now in Thailand. We have 2 in Fiji. We have 1 in Mauritius, 1 in the Maldives, 1 in Guam, and of course the ones in Hawaii. And not sucky places to visit. So definitely a nice portfolio of properties. We were started by the Kelly family 70 years ago, and it's been a family-owned, wholly owned company for actually 69 years. But in the 69th year, which was last year, this is the 70th year now, they decided to exit the business and sold to KSL Capital and KSL Resorts. So that transition is taking place now, and it's as these things happen, there are always some concerns of what's going on. But so far, it looks like some really good stuff. It's exciting to see KSL come in with new ideas, but more importantly than the new ideas, the new capital. As a family-owned company that didn't like taking loans out or to grow aggressively. We'll potentially now have that and looking at potentially really improving some of our key properties. As I'm sure you guys know, and many of the listeners may know, there in Waikiki Beach, there are only 7 properties that are really on the beach, right? And on the beach means you walk out of your hotel and your feet are in the sand. Some will claim to be on the beach, but they're across the street from the beach. Not bad either, but you'd actually have to physically cross the street to get there. So of those 7 properties, 2 are Outriggers. They are beautiful properties, but they could certainly use additional love and care. And we're looking forward to that with some of the capital that KSL brings with us.
Nice.
Well, and as far as just to interject, I believe your properties actually have real beaches too, because there are a couple of beachfront hotels that lack beaches.
That is correct. There's a couple to be remainless on Holiday Insurance that actually they front the beach, but the due to beach erosion, the actual beach are gone. So yes, you're absolutely correct, Robert. Both of our hotels have beautiful beachfront sand that you can walk out and go swimming and drop your surfboard in and start the day. Which
Dan,
maybe I'll do today.
This may be a mundane question. Is there a beach replenishment program? I mean, Florida has that. I mean, the state spends a lot of money and everything else because they're trying to keep the East Coast surviving, even though the Mother Nature isn't providing. And does the same thing happen in Hawaii, or is environmentally it's just something that's not feasible to be done, that they allow the natural ecosystem to adjust the beach?
They actually do beach replenishment, but for whatever reason, it doesn't make it to a couple of the hotels. I guess it's just the way the geography is. But every 5 or so years, they'll do a replenishment project, and it was great. Actually, the bulk of it is done right in front of one of our hotels, the Outrigger Waikiki. And for a while we have this huge stretch of beach, but over time it does erode. Right now we're sort of in the cycle of it's probably halfway through, and soon there'll be another replenishment project. And we do have the Maldives resort as well, which we gave our CEO a hard time about that. His ROI analysis better be based on a shorter time frame, because unless things change, a lot of those islands may not be around for a long time. But
well, are the properties on stilts? You just need
that's right.
The stilts there.
We do have over the water. I think
it makes it more exotic if it's in the middle of nowhere. Like there's no land.
Exactly.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, if it's any consolation, there's a gentleman down in Key West that's trying to make the first floating mobile hotel that will be.
That's called a cruise ship.
Okay.
That's a cruise ship.
No, it doesn't have a pointy end and a little flat end. It's actually a big boxy thing with like 7 stories.
So it's Florida does a cruise ship.
Yeah. Okay. So Florida does.
Yeah.
Some people think he's a little crazy. I'm not saying that he's exactly on mark with all this, but the renderings are really pretty.
Is it really the first? Because doesn't Biloxi, aren't all their casinos on barges?
Well, as long as there's 6 inches of water below, it's floating. Yeah.
So it's not really the first. I mean, that's Biloxi.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well,
I think the difference.
Let's put it that way. I guess the idea of floating over to a coral reef and then destroying it by putting pillars down to hold up a hotel. I guess there might be some obstacles. I'm not too sure about that detail yet.
Probably the main difference between that and a cruise ship is this thing isn't seaworthy.
One hurricane and it's wherever.
No, wait, use that difference, right?
Yeah.
All right. So with KSL, that's actually pretty exciting. They have a pretty good track record of taking on interesting product and actually doing well with it. So I mean, you've got to be pretty excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at the potential suitors that came along, I think they were the best possible outcome for us. These guys are hotel guys. That's their core competency. It's what they do. It's not one of their 15, verticals that they take care of. And so, they come in and they don't ask you what ADR is when they come into the office. They already know. So, and they also work with, other industry people. So, one of the challenging things about working in Hawaii, which is why I'm probably the only reason why I'm excited to go to New York in February for HSMAI, is that it is like literally an island, right? So in the middle of the Pacific. So it's good to get outside views and opinions and things, and they bring that to the table. And again, so does HSMI, of course, and again, the only thing that'll bring me to New York in February, I think, from Hawaii.
Well, for some other people too, because everyone keeps asking every year, why do we keep doing this in New York in February?
low occupancy is the reason.
Yeah, that's it. How else are you going to get New York unless it's in February, right?
I don't know. It's pretty light in Orlando right now. I'm sure we could house it here, and the weather's beautiful. It's 72 degrees.
Yeah. Well, this weekend is supposedly the pivot point where now the world changes for Florida, and it gets into the prime until Easter ends and all that stuff. But I remember and there's no comparison to it because at least it was still connected to the mainland. But when I was down in Key Largo with hotels, we called it getting off the rock. We just had to leave, once a month to get out of there just to go see civilization, whether it would be shopping or whatever. And so I can only imagine where that's not even an option for you. I mean, it's not like, let's just fly out of here every once a month or something. And it's a little farther of a distance to go anywhere from there. So I can see let's go someplace else other than here, no matter how beautiful paradise is.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to get off the rock every once in a while, but it takes you 5 hours to get anywhere. So at least 5 hours to get anywhere. Yeah. And so it definitely does get tough. But, I lived here many years ago, and it's gotten a lot better in terms of feeling more cosmopolitan and having access to things. Used to be, bring me this from the mainland, bring me this. And, with Amazon Prime, which amazingly enough works in Hawaii, I don't know how they make money on it. I'm guessing they don't. But, you can get whatever you need. And it's definitely changed for the better in that regard.
Nice.
Yeah.
Some questions. I mean, first up,
Oh, actually, Holly, yeah, Holly has a question on what unique challenges and opportunities doing digital marketing with Hawaii properties.
I think it's not all that different from everybody else, but also I'll caveat that by saying that in turn it went every other leisure destination. In that we obviously the one challenge is getting here. There's no drive market, but there is a local market, which does actually take up quite a bit of occupancy, especially during certain times of the year. So that's somebody behind me right now. Apologies for that.
You'll probably hear my dog bark somewhere in the midst of this conversation, or Robert's cat will come cruising through.
I'll have a cat walk. Yeah, my cat comes in and comments periodically.
Okay. So. Yeah. So being a leisure market in a fly destination obviously has some additional challenges, and it's been interesting though over the years. You've seen more and more people move towards FIT bookings, towards direct bookings, as opposed to booking through the traditional wholesale agents. I mean, when I was first involved in this market, the majority of bookings were coming in as packages, and now that has changed, especially for the island of Oahu, which is the engine that drives Hawaii. Is that you're seeing more people who are booking their air separately and their hotel, which is a great opportunity for us to tap into the direct market. I think we see actually pretty good numbers in that regard. And in fact, I think you would probably, although some of our destinations you can drive to, there is a land bridge to Phuket properties from the main island, from the main part of Thailand, and Mauritius is a fairly big city, or it's close to a fairly big city. Most of our markets are tourists flying in, so that is definitely something that we're challenged with in the digital space, especially when you're looking at direct marketing. We're not doing, we don't have package product, other than the potential to work with some of the big guys in white labeling their product, but it's still really not a direct booking. But other than that, I think our challenges are the same. Cost of acquisition, getting people at least on the first try to come through us rather than the OTAs. Just the pure cost of doing our search marketing, our display marketing, and just trying to get a little bit of space in the consumer decision making process early on outside of the OTAs.
That brings up, just to continue that thought process for a second, because flat out, you're one person in the world that if I ever were to ask how to handle wholesalers, consortias, tour operators, so that you're the one person I can only, to me, is you deal with it in such a density level and such a daily level that you're an authority over most people's perspective is what they think it is. And to me, I had a client that was in Hawaii for briefly a client that was in Hawaii, and it was so hard because the destination is the same. There's almost a mirror capacity of types of hotels with some slight differentiation. Do you find yourself that you have to market higher in, I hate saying the funnel, but higher in the aspirational mode, the discovery mode, because you have to kind of get in front of people and make them start relating to their Hawaiian experience with your product first before they start realizing there's so many variations that are asimilar or maybe a different opportunity? I mean, how do you adjust your marketing strategy to compensate for the fact that you are in the same location as your competitors? You are offering relatively same product in some circumstances. How do you get yourself separated from the pack, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, ideally, I'd love to play higher in the funnel, but budgets don't allow to play too high in the funnel because your budget will be depleted very quickly if you're trying to play up there. So, we tend to play further down in the funnel. I think our brand, especially, one of the great things about the internet, I always say, although I think it's shifted a bit over the past probably 5 years or so, the internet was the great equalizer for small companies like us. We could get out there and we can be there with the big boys just as easily by having a clever SEO strategy and some guerrilla marketing, and we could be out there in front with them. And to some extent, that's still there. I think we do differentiate ourselves. I think the service and the product is the product. I mean, I think our product is great, but everybody has a room with a bed in it. But a big differentiator for us is our service, the family run company, and the way we treat our guests. And we have a history of it. We have a whole program of engaging our hosts and getting us to support the Hawaiian culture and the culture of the company. And I think these things come out in things like TripAdvisor. As much as I have a love-hate relationship with them, the review aspect of TripAdvisor is absolutely awesome. If you could ever find them through all their advertising, but that helps us. And I know the billboard effect has been poo-pooed a little bit over the past few years, but that also helps us. Now that we're in a list with the Sheratons and the Marriotts, and you see Outrigger there, it sort of piques people's interest. And I also think the movement, that Airbnb captured a bit through their marketing genius, not through the reality of their product, but through their marketing genius. What they captured was the fact that people want these local experiences. I think that's something that we offer and we've been doing for a long time. And I think that comes out and helps us sort of rise above the rest. But, we do a little bit of high funnel advertising, maybe things where we could partner with people to amplify our voice. So if an airline is doing something or we just actually we're in the the Disney movie Moana. I think Edward might be young enough to have young kids. The rest of us are a little bit older. We might not have.
It's actually one of the better recent Disney movies.
So we got it. We got some PR into that as well, and we're in there the DVD jacket and some other things that are coming out. So when we can do things that will amplify our message beyond, the few dollars we can throw it at, we'll certainly do that. And my team is always working hard and trying to figure out how we can partner with people to amplify beyond just going out and buying display or getting a travel travel and leisure spread or something like that.
Dan, just so you know, because I'm playing moderator for others. You might see me typing, not out of disrespect of not paying attention to you. I'm typing notes and commenting to people so that I don't distract from what you're talking about. So I apologize if it looks like I'm wandering.
He claims that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
I put a Bluetooth in so people don't think I'm crazy just talking to myself. Shut up, let them talk.
It's a plausible.
So Dan, you were talking about like your unique position on being able to guerrilla market, and obviously in the early days SEO and everything, because you are a heavily branded market, and they have people that aren't necessarily on island marketing their stuff. What have you shifted to now that SEO has kind of been cracked to a certain level and is getting more expensive? Have you guys started looking elsewhere in those types of efforts?
We have, and I hate to say that we haven't found the magic bullet yet. That we're playing around with different things. Before I had a policy of not using things like Meta. I'm playing around a little bit, not so much with the CPC Meta, but maybe the CPA models. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at doing a little bit of that to see what we can do in that area. We are being much more aggressive in our retargeting, as well as looking at better retargeting and personalization. We things like when you're on my site and then magically you see me in your Facebook feed, right? So those sort of things that we're working on in retargeting. We are looking at things and testing products like Sojern that work more on a CPA model that allow us. So you put the spend up only when you get the bookings. The big challenge with that is, okay, what's incremental and what are they just taking revenue share for that we would have gotten anyway. So we're just giving up that percentage. Right. So we're it's an interesting time because I agree SEO is, although my SEO consultant would tell me otherwise, but SEO is not, what it used to be. We're with mobile, you're not even on the first, scroll yet. You probably have to scroll down a couple of times with your finger before you're there. And I think, even us being this resort destination where you think people want to sit down with their cup of coffee and look at all the beautiful pictures, we're still getting more than 50% of our traffic is coming through our mobile devices. So we're trying everything. So with this amazing panel here, I'm wondering if you've heard of any amazing things that's working for hoteliers.
Well, so because of the type of destination you are, what are you guys doing to romance the sale? Because I think about the family friendly aspect to your destination and everything. And I think about my own epiphany, being lucky enough to have been in travel before having kids, and then seeing the difference in how I care about travel after kids. One of the things I found that actually amplified how much I got excited about a hotel was just going through and showing the kids what's in it for them. Like, here's what's coming up. And it actually completely changed my perspective on hotel marketing and where I think hotels could strengthen their position. And it's actually a normal sales tactic, which is continuing to sell after the sale. I mean, have you guys looked into that area at all, or thought about that as its own thing? I mean, obviously you do it anyways, but like, have you actually focused into that place?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. We are just in the process of launching our CRM program that will enable us to more aggressively target people who've booked, get them excited about the vacation. And one of sort of the tenets that I have with my team, and that I'm trying to get people to understand, especially at the property level, is we're only ever going to get a slice of pie of people on their first booking. Right? They're going to book through wholesalers. They're going to book through OTAs. They're going to book how they're going to book. But we're going to try our darndest to get them to book. But where we're going to have the greatest success is on their second stay. We should be really capturing, in theory, 100% of the share of those people. They should now, after staying at our hotel, because of our great service, because of the fact that we got them so excited before the trip, and got them, remembering it after the trip, with whether it be through email, SMS messaging, Facebook posting, any of those things, that the next time they come and book, they're coming straight to us. And that's what we're trying to drive towards. And our CRM is sort of part of that process, both pre-stay, during stay, and post-stay. We really want to engage those guests. We want them to go in and say, hey, they're posting great stuff on their Facebook page. I'm going to like them. And then when they go home, it's still in their feed and they're still remembering it. We want to do, surprise and delight type of tactics when people are in-house, so that they're posting it, it's memorable, and people are seeing this. So yeah, absolutely. We want to sort of build that long-term relationship from the point of booking, through to their next stay. So that is definitely a focus for us.
What CRM do you use with your systems? What are you working with? What CRM?
We recently partnered with Global Hotel Alliance as our as a loyalty program. So it's sort of an alliance of like-minded brands. I think if you take a look at their site, gha.com, you'll see it's a lot of hotels like Outrigger. A lot of them are smaller brands that are some of them actually quite family-owned brands that are in the space, and all individually we couldn't create a loyalty or recognition program of any scale, but this helps us do that. And part of that it comes with some tools that will enable us to do CRM. That being said, that was a budgetary issue, so I'm hoping our friends at KSL will help us make maybe
on KSL watching the show today.
even a more robust tool we may be looking at. But the tool that we're looking to put in place will enable us to do all of this stuff. It may not have all of the bells and whistles. You'd love to see like the little pop up on the side when someone checks in and says, this guy has a cloud score of 95, be extra nice to him. It may not have that level, but we'll certainly be able to reach out to our customers pre, during, and post stay, and then be able to slice and dice our database to be able to talk to them, as opposed to talking to a mass blast email kind of thing.
Well, and that's one of the best parts about CRM is, if you actually look at what most email marketers inside this industry, what I think they're getting wrong is they're more concerned about the number of communications versus the actual quality. So understand, if you're having a good conversation and you're giving people something that they want, there's no sensitivity to amount. Right. But a lot of hotels, in looking at data, I think have made the mistake of seeing, oh, hey, when we went to 7 or 8 or 9 total communications in a sprint with, a specific segment, we got a higher opt-out rate. What they don't realize is it's not the number.
Yeah.
It's how many times are you wrong is what actually gets you opt out. How many times did you give me the wrong message that, that's when you get someone tuning out. So, CRM and talking more and romancing the sale before, and then, leaving on a high point too. I think one of the big mistakes hotels make is the last custom communication that you generally see from a hotel, branded or independent, is a thank you. And, in that thank you is usually two things that I just don't think should be in the last communication. One is stay again. I think you can do that later. And then the other is the operational survey. Operational survey shouldn't be the last custom touch you have, because if you think about the psychology of an operational survey, you're taking even the guest who had the happiest stay and you're asking them to think about you in a critical way.
Right.
And if that's the last time you're asking them to think about their trip, that's what resonates.
Yeah.
Whereas ending on a higher note, is just, it makes sense. So having after that email communication, that's still an extension of the original reason for communication, I think is something that not enough hotels do.
And
I think that's a great point. I really like that, especially about the last thing being potentially a critical statement. Even if they mostly liked it, everybody's going to think about the one or two critical things.
Here's the thing. The best trips have a low point. The worst trips have a high point. Yep. So if the last thing you're focused on is feedback of how we could have done better, then no matter what the type of trip it was, they're focused on the same thing.
And I got to tell you, I don't know whether it's scary for me to think that we think alike, or just I'm damn lucky that I think like you. But the serving system that I set up over at one of my clients after our discussions. Remember that I told you about the preferred guest program that we were trying to tell you? And I'm going to bring it up with Dan a little bit here too. But one of the key elements I told him was do not ask them as they're walking out the door what was wrong. At the end of the day, when they're walking out the door, thank them and give them a reward value proposition of why they want to come back. But don't. And so what we do now is with them, we try to incite them to go over to the business center. We don't even try to make it do any engagement. We say, hey, we'll give you $20 off your room right now. It's worth $20 to us for you to sit down in the business center right now and ask what we call it the long form, because there's more than 10 questions and they're conditional questions. So you can actually answer up to 15 depending upon how you answer. And it's and it's immediate, whether the pillows were stale or whether the bed was a little frumpy. They tell us right there because they're still in a positive mood. And then when we react on it, not only do we do better guest satisfaction immediately, because they may not have mentioned that stuff unless they were given the context to do it, but we also, to your point, are not walking them out the door thinking what was wrong with this place and would I come back again? Because they're not going to.
But I also have a question for you, Lauren. Why does it have to be that many questions? Because here's the thing.
Well,
why aren't you more focused on what do you want to talk to us about?
Early questions like that are done at the front desk 1-to-1. These are incentives to get $20 off. This is the balance between ownership's value proposition and getting data that's useful.
But that's the thing. So useful. So how do they answer the question? Are they answering it with telling you what their thoughts were, or are they answering like a 0 to 5?
Oh no. Thoughts. Most are single statements. There is scale.
Okay.
But we don't ask, will you come back? Those questions are not part of the survey. This is first impression, service at check-in, service with your car, things that are, hey, you're here. Okay. Is it living up to what brought you here? Is really the context of the questions, so that there's a reaffirmation of what brought you here is what you're getting. Because if it's not, we're going to fix this right away. And those surveys get looked at as soon as they're churned, so that immediately it's almost a guest service issue. And the data then we can use later to say, look, we're sucking at this car rival thing between 11 and 12. We're always backed up. Add another person. We just can't do that kind of problem consistent. So that's where that kind of survey comes from, and that's why it's worth the $20 in the owner's eyes that we're walking them to the biz center saying, hey, just sit down for a few minutes, and because we're taking time out of your valuable vacation, so we got to make it worthwhile to them. So. But Dan, we talk a lot about loyalty versus reward programs and everything else. And independent hotels have challenges because they don't have the networking to give the value proposition. And the same client that I'm bantering about here on this, we did it where we isolated on the CRM, the value proposition of the guest in the sense of their durability of how much business they give us. Now that may not be applicable to you because not everybody's frequently coming to Hawaii. They're not doing it as a multi-year travel. So this may not be a apples to oranges kind of apples to apples comparison, but we identified who was the value proposition and we created tiered relationships on offering value propositions around the hotel to them, so that you had your general guest and you had, in this case for this hotel, guests that stayed at least 4 nights in the past rolling 12 months. And we identified them and gave them a different value proposition of engagement, first choices on some things, discounts in local retails and things like this is experience the destination better kind of thing. And then there we had our higher level, which were people even beyond that. And it gave the front desk a tool to use to engage with the people, and it gave them an immediate gratification relationship. It wasn't, hey, after your 3rd visit, you'll get a bottle of water. It was like, we recognize your value proposition right now, so we want to reward you right now with more things that are value to what you're coming and staying with us for. So I just wanted to throw that in as something you had asked about, what are idea kind of stuff. That was one of the things I want to mention.
And that's absolutely where we want to move. You know, when you look at loyalty, you sort of have the reward aspect and the recognition aspect. We don't think we'll ever play really in that reward aspect, but in the recognition aspect.
It's a chasing tail,
and that's for boxes in random cities, not leisure destinations that people spend years thinking about going to.
Right. But we are looking at what I guess my CRM guy calls a hidden loyalty program, right? Where we give stuff away and do the things that Lauren's talking about, but it's not published anywhere. You know, mm-hmm. It's just we do it for the guest. And the thing is, you know, right, as you guys know, in the loyalty program, only a small percentage of your guests are in that loyalty program. You may actually have loyal guests who are not in that loyalty program.
Right.
So you still want to recognize them. So, you know, the idea of being, again, from an email perspective, we've been pretty good at dissecting our database, but not from the check-in perspective. And that's what our CRM wants. We want to be able to do. We want to be able to know this is the guy's 4th stay, that there's something that he loves going to Duke's on Sunday. We want to give him a few drinks for that or something.
Well, and that's the thing, like that, you know, really is going to drive more impact for your business than a point scheme. Because we all know as being in this industry that how the check-in experience goes sets the tone for what they think of the rest of their experience. So if you exceed their expectations at check-in, they're going to look past things that other people may complain about or even they complain about. Just that, like, on the other side of it, if you disappoint at check-in, they're going to be hypercritical of everything. Mm-hmm. And if you look at, you know, I spend a lot of time paying attention to what people say about hotels, and you can actually spot where the problem happens in most of these reviews because it's the thing that gets written about. Like, it's like they build up and then they're like, and on top of that, the check-in took forever. And it's like, okay, so you had a bad check-in experience and you just didn't want to like start with that. But if you think about the human nature of it, it's obvious what you're mad about. So if that's where you're going to be focusing your, hey, wow, this is your 5th time here. And, you know, we know the last few times you've loved this. So you know what, here it is on us. We really, really love having you here. That is going to be far more impactful to winning a lifetime customer than points.
Well, and you run the same risk. Go ahead, Robert. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just had a question. So in terms of cross-selling other islands or destinations, I mean, have you found that the Outrigger guests, do they come back like they always hit? They come back to the Reef every year, every other year. I'm sure there's a segment that's like that where they just hit that. Or do you find that other ones wind up kind of going, hey, they're going to go hit a couple, you know, other islands, Big Island or Maui, that sort of thing. I got to imagine the Thailand, Mauritius, Maldives cross-sell might be a little challenging.
I'll tell you.
Here's your $50 off coupon to go to the Maldives.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of. I think in Hawaii you do see a lot of it. But it was funny. I was on a plane a couple of months ago, coming from the mainland back to Hawaii, and I was sitting next to a guy. I was like, "Yeah, I know Outrigger," and I was expecting, "Oh, here we go again." His family took him to Outrigger Waikiki every year when he was, you know, you hear this so often, right? Right. Outrigger Waikiki is like the one place when you always expect they'll say that, right? And we have an incredible, you know, even without our CRM program, we have an incredible second stay. What's the word I'm looking for? A return visit. Sorry, we have an incredible return visit percentage. It's like up close to 50% of the house is our returnees. So it's pretty incredible. That would be, you know, other places are not so much like that. But I was sitting next to this guy, and he's like, "Yeah," and we're heading to Hawaii, and he's like, "Yeah, I just stayed at one of your properties," and you know, expecting. He's like, "Yeah, I was in Phuket, and it was beautiful." I was like, "That was when I know we sort of made it. You know, we made it outside." So I think when people are coming here, they'll often look at us when they're looking at multi-island. But I think we're starting to get, our aspirational goal is to be the premier beachfront brand. Right, we only have a few dots on the map right now, but the idea being that we think that's a niche that's not nobody really owns right now. Of course, all the big boxes have the beach hotels, and there are regional players that have things on the beach, but there's very few companies that focus on just sun and sand, and that's sort of our focus and where we want to be. And hopefully over time, they'll have a great experience. And we've actually seen it the other way. They've had a great experience in Thailand. And then they come over to Hawaii. They'll stay at an Outrigger, and you especially see that which is great because you see it's a different customer base, right? You're looking at more of the Asia customer base than you are the North American customer base. I mean, we have lots of Europeans out there, but it's a much obviously longer trip to Hawaii for the Europeans than for a lot of the Asian countries where we have direct flights. So we are starting to see that. It's still as I say in Hawaii, small kind. But it's that's our vision.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, and with KSL, seems I don't know personally their strategy, but they seem to have picked up something called Apple Leisure Group, which has things like AM resorts and things like that in it. Which, gosh, those are beachfront properties. Now they're all inclusives, so different sort of things. So I don't know if maybe from a real estate perspective, they're saying, okay, here we have different products that are beachfront.
I'm salivating over those properties, but I don't know. I don't know nothing, so I guess.
Well, you kind of funny.
This is when you see the doors behind Dan open up and a couple guys in sunglasses grab.
So, so to do something a little bit different, because usually I miss these when we actually have hoteliers on.
We try to make all the good hosts come when
when I'm not here. But
most of them really
actually
kind of
state that
it's not going to be on. All right, I'll be on that one.
I'll be on.
You have two consultants and a tech vendor. You have our time. What would you like to ask us about what you do?
Oh, nice twist.
I already offered my $50 off for the cross-sell to Thailand and the Maldives.
Is that all you got, Robert?
What else do you want?
Lauren hasn't given you an idea yet.
Point systems. Yeah, big things. Free stays.
Okay, we're going to mute Robert now. He's gone off the edge.
Please don't do
don't
any
do
of those, please.
I'm trying to think where we have the biggest challenges. I mean, as a small brand, we do use a lot of third parties to help us. So vendor selection is always a challenge for us. Sifting through the bright, shiny objects and figuring out what it is that we want to test on. I would say the one thing that drives me nuts, and I've asked consultants who don't have the greatest answer, and I ask vendors who often have the greatest answer, but they're not actually accurate. But is attribution modeling. Especially it's always been hard. It's even harder now with mobile. It's hard for me to determine. When it was last click, I was dumb and happy, right? You could easily understand and apply your dollars that way. But when you realize ignorance is not bliss and you're wasting your money, you're trying to figure out what's working and what's not. So that's probably one of the areas that I'm always looking at and meeting with vendors and different people to figure out what's out there and what's working, and I haven't found anything yet.
Yeah, that's like everyone's trying to figure that out. Listen, things are getting better, but you have to understand not one thing makes the decision. Just like,
right.
I'll just look at how we look at a sale. When we look at a sale, we try to very early pick up what exposure did you have with us? And when we realize someone either had a lot of exposure with us or not enough exposure with us, we'll actually target those people to get a bit more exposure to fill it in, because it's not one experience that leads to it. It's not the ad you had on my Facebook feed that made me go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to Hawaii and I'm going to stay at an Outrigger. It's a culmination of things that leads in the decision path. So attribution, even when you can track it, it's still not giving you the answer, because you need to then understand in the guest journey where you're going to learn more about where you lose people than you are going to learn where you actually got them. What was the moment that you got them? Because there's even time gap from when you've won someone over to when they actually take action. So, I mean, one thing I'd say is if you're chasing the holy grail of knowing what's working, you need to make sure that in that you're realistic that it's not one thing. It's going to be a series of things that push someone to the decision. And if you start tracking that way, you can start putting together clusters of people who have seen this and done this and did this, tended to make this type of decision within the timeline of X. So therefore, we can see that this type of thing mixed with this type of thing leads to this type of behavior. That's what you should be looking for. Because even last click, like, that was always like kind of funny, is that's not how decisions are made. You know, I mean, there aren't people who are like, oh, wow, that's a really nice video, I want to go there. Because if you ask, you'll find out, oh no, that person was marketed to by, you know, the Hawaiian Tourism Board 3 years ago and didn't take action. And then somehow something popped up, but the seed was planted long before. And so in attribution modeling, one of the important things is try to capture as much of the lifetime guest journey as you can, and then see what the more aggregate data of that can tell you.
Yeah, so I agree with that. Go ahead, Robert.
I was going to say, you have to somehow identify and tag all those kids who saw Moana. So 25, 30 years from when they're going, they don't want to go to Hawaii. There's something embedded way back there.
We're still getting the Lilo and Stitch.
I look at my advice to my yeah, that's right. Now, my advice to a lot of my clients is to treat all these different communications as campaigns. So everything, you know, every social link, you know, has tags. It's all taken in where you've dropped your pixels everywhere you possibly can, and you collect that overall data. Because again, I think a lot of folks spend a lot of time trying to exactly connect the dots, and it's tough, because they're out there on Expedia where it's a black hole, or, you know, TripAdvisor or something like that, where you just have no visibility, or the Hawaii CVP site, or a co-op campaign through a tour operator, and
or a random television show about buying real estate in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these are the things that all play a role in it. And so you always have to accept that no matter what you do, that's not the thing that did it. That was present when they were at the point to just act.
And see, those are the uncontrollable things. I'll give you a very mechanical answer to augment what Ed had said. Ed, you made an excellent point about seeing the correlations of some things to determine what it is you need to do to spark with the changes that you're wanting. I'll give you an exercise of what I've done with a client and see if this helps answer something that you're asking specifically for, Dan. I go to the GA analytics and I pull out the top converting time. But before I start this process, the attribution string, before I start this process, I create with the client a defined exact time that they are the most comfortable with knowing exactly who's walking in their door for what reason, so that they have the most intuitive understanding of whatever their client base is for a very narrow time cast. And then I take the attribution string of that very narrow time cast. And to Robert's point, every pixel track that's gone through, I look at the attribution string. And first off, when I first look at the attribution string is I give it equal weight. You know, you have all the different ways of calculating. I give it all equal weight. Then I look at, because I know what they did on my organic, I know what paid they hit. You know, I'm not talking about. Remember that color code, that little chain that shows you the attribution that GA tells you, and then I just take the top one, which usually has the most few connections because it's the apex of the shorter time span of it. And then I know exactly what my organic was that contributed. I know exactly what my paid was that contributed. I know exactly my social. Then I go in and I see exactly the traffic in the narrow time cast that I have as to when they were engaged with. I also then look to what Ed had pointed out, the extraneous things. What else was going on in market that I knew of, whether it was an ad campaign or whatever. But this is all just putting combustible stuff in a pile. No fire yet. This is just, everything's there for it to have happened. What created the conversion of this? So then I use a trigger. I'll go over and define, after I've decided exactly the stages in my top most converting attribution string, I'll then time decay the ones that I see time gaps for. This was outside the window this far. Then I take my business cycle and say, my business cycle is a 47-day discovery, 24-day book window, 7-day acquisition, 5-day stay. I put a timeline against that whole attribution string. And my dogs decide the squirrels are attacking.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Your dog's like, yes, he's talking attribution.
I'm gonna go
This is my
squirrels.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now we know
And
who's
I said,
responsible
the
for
squirrels
it.
are not attacking. Anyway, once I've done that, I then decide which ones decay on value. This was outside the window of opportunity. Although it contributed, it wasn't the causation. Then I see where the one in the time frame for what was going on, for the demographics that the property says is coming in the door on that attribution string in that time window was the spark. Then I try to recreate that model. Then I say, if that's the case, if that content, whether it was organic, whether it was paid, whether it was social, if that engagement was the spark to the fire, let me recreate. So instead of waiting for the water to come, or the maple to come out of the tree for Canadians, is I would then go over and say, I'm going to tap it. I'm going to actually see if this attribution string, based on what I've defined it for, can actually be recreated by recreating what I consider to be the catalyst to it. And if you can do that, then that creates the model for next year. And then you see if you can expand that time frame because of the similarity of demographics or similarity of business cycle or similarity of season. And so then you kind of start very small, very precise, where you can quantify most of the detail to some cause and effect relationship. And then you start expanding that strategy. And then you get as far as you can before it's no longer relevant. And then you start all over again. So I don't know if it was worth your trip to be on a 6:30 call in the morning, but at least it was a most specific answer I can give somebody in a public environment. How's that?
Well, and I'll tag on something else that I've done. If you've gotten all the stuff tagged, you've treated as campaigns, what I try to find is, say, I don't know, for you guys, honeymoon market or something like that, obviously a strong market. If you can go and figure out, here are these individuals who stayed, they were honeymooners, we know about them, then you go use that information, then go back up through the funnel, right? So you take it from the end result and work backwards, and that hopefully should give you some commonality. So again, if it's a large enough market, if it's a really specific thing, sometimes that can lead people down the wrong path just because, like, coincidentally, 3 people did this. Well, yeah, just random versus a trend. But I think especially with you, with a sizable market like that, or if you start, drawing out what's going on for business from Washington State versus California, things like that, West Coast or East Coast markets and things like that, you may be able to start figuring out some of those things from looking at the bottom and going back up.
No, because I had Australian clients for a while, and we did something not exactly, very similar to what I just described. Because Australia, the U.S. market for them is much more aspirational than it is for you. You have a higher frequency pattern than the Australians do for the U.S. market. They have the backpackers, and then you have the empty nesters, and there's a very big gap in between that they want to drink. And I used up software that we've had on here before, Sean Williams, Pre-Engage. I don't know whether it's still in existence or not. Great platform. But we isolated off of their websites the non-converters. I mean, high-end, absolutely, they are not coming converters. 20 times to the accommodations page, 30 times to the location interest page. No. Offer, no conversion. And we isolated the 2 major feeder markets. We did San Francisco, which were gateway markets. They weren't really feeder markets. They were gateway markets. So LA and San Francisco, flight patterns out of there. And we took 100 I ain't converting people. Just 100 of these core, high traffic, great interest, love the site, see all the time, frequency, just don't convert. And we sent them, at the time I was playing with my 360 camera, and I did 5 360 videos in Sydney. And I did it from the aspect of the concierge, showing Taronga Zoo, the bridge, the Opera House, the Westerfields Tower, and in the lobby real quickly. And then we sent them Google Cardboards with the QA, say, hey, play this. We put it in the mail, say, hey, try this. And we sent 100 of them, and we showed them Sydney. This is why you want to come thing. 64 of them booked.
Wow.
So it's a trigger.
Wow.
I mean, because we isolated, they know they wanted to go. They just couldn't get that justification. We don't know what that justification was. Financial, time frame, age. We have no idea. But we did know that they wanted it. So we just had to put the spark to the fuel that was sitting there. And that was, when are you going to do that? And that was the verbiage in the videos. When are you going to do this if not now? Why are you not seeing this if not now? Why not enjoy it if it's not now?
Well, and being Australia, you could say, soon we're going to be China, so act now.
Yeah, before the flight changes, I guess. Yeah,
before we're completely bought.
How did they capture the guest information? I mean, I know you get the IP address and all that stuff.
Spring Engage was excellent about that. That was the value proposition of Spring Engage was it could isolate out. I used it a lot so that we wouldn't re-off. The real value of Spring Engage, and I wish Sean was here to explain himself because we've had him on the show. He's been with us for a long, many time. What it did was it was a smart slider, and basically how it started. It could isolate out so that we wouldn't offer anybody an offer that they already booked with. That we never put money back on the table. We know when somebody came back that they had already purchased from us. We created conditionals as to how long they stayed on a page, as to whether or not we gave a discounted offer that only they saw, that wouldn't be seen if they had a different offer, if they were in a group block. There was lots of ways to keep them funky. So I'll send you the link to it, Spring Engage. I hope Sean's still there. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but that's what I used him for, was to go over and isolate out the traffic stream to the website so that we were offering targeted stuff that wasn't putting money on the table, or offering stuff that was more specific to their feeder market. We did that too. Like, hey, you're coming from Philly. We knew rate resistance for the market. We knew time of market that they wanted to travel. We made sure those offers popped up as that for that, so that they had a higher opportunity to convert.
And does the data follow them from mobile to desktop, or is
at the time? No. At the time, no. That goes back a few years before you had cross-platform. So no, that wasn't one of those ones where we had that chance. So it was really based strictly on desktop, and we were still able to have that success, knowing that was the functional engagement we had with them at the time. The market has changed since then for that, and I don't know if Sean's modified his software to do that. But I good reason to contact Sean and go, dude, what's going on? So yeah.
Well, and actually, we've got a question in the comments here. Jeremiah, yep, says, what are your favorite micro commitments in your guest buying journey?
Okay, I need some help with the smart people on the call. What is meant by micro commitment?
I think it's like a micro, like a decision point where someone's coming in during their guest journey, and at that particular point they turned into some form of conversion.
Right. So an example of this,
either they registered for newsletter,
even think lighter than
or anything.
They clicked in to check your rates. That's a micro commitment. Like
yeah.
you got them to the point where they were like doing a sanity check on, can they afford this? So, so the most basic and the most obvious are, like Robert said, the booking path and their journey into the booking path, and, who completes the booking path, and then newsletter. Do you guys have anything besides that you think plays a role in learning more about the behavior of your different site visitors?
Yeah, I think, we spend, I've always had this debate, both in my mind and with people, is the value of all the engaging content that we try to create. Because part of me says, and I understand resort brands are potentially different, but part of me says that people come to look at your room, look at your price, and book. If they want additional information about the destination and cool stuff and that they'll go somewhere else. And the other part of me and many people believe, right, is that you want to engage them on the site, get them excited, give them social links and all that stuff. So it does, well, number one, he asked what the favorite is. My favorite is when they hit buy. Okay, that's the
last one. The last one's
which is the large red flashing button on the middle of their homepage.
But besides that is when they interact with the site, when they go into our social links, when they go into our stories and our blog, and if you go to our website, you'll see that we try to focus on our hosts and the experience on property, our cultural events and things like that. We spend a lot of time and effort on property. I think it's a no-brainer. It does it, and I think I'm hoping so. It does it online as well. But I wonder, when people are going deeper into it and spending more time actually on the content side, that sort of validates that for me and gets me excited about continuing to do it, because there's so much cool stuff you can do in that space. Like Lauren was talking about, we're thinking about going out and doing this sort of thing where we give the concierge the 360 and let him show his version of Mauritius or Maldives or Oahu. But there's expense involved with that, and do people really want it? So that, to me, that's cool. That when they go into that area and spend time there, I really like that. It shows that also that to a question that you had earlier, Lauren, it also shows that we're probably catching them higher in the funnel where they're still dreaming about it, as opposed to they're ready to make that buying decision.
Well, and something to think about when you're looking at investing on, do you want your concierge to spend time on that, is go look to see who's already fulfilling that need for your guests. So go do a search on YouTube about you, like what you think people would want to look for videos about you. And then go look, because guests have posted and other people have posted, and go see how many views it's had and if there's any comments on it or anything like that. And that's unpromoted in most cases. So that's probably the best barometer. If all of a sudden you see that there are a lot of videos about this, about us, and they actually have a pretty good viewership, then you're on to, all right, maybe it makes sense for us to throw a little bit of money into doing something where we can pick up the analytics and, and the engagement and promote it.
We do work with a company called Olapic to bring some of that social UGC into our site, and we're just sort of putting our foot in the water on that to see how that works, and we want to blow that out a little bit more. It's funny that you mentioned. I was just, everybody in the hotel business is a digital expert. You guys already know that, right? From the front desk up to the C levels, right? They're all experts because they know how to use Google. Somebody came to me the other day saying, let they're really hot on 360s, which I think, by the way, is a great idea, but although I'm not that sure how well it does. So, my one question I always ask myself is, who's doing it and who's doing it well? And you sort of go out and you search around and you see, because especially as a small company, although, part of me wants to be the innovator, but another part of me doesn't want to be the one who blows all the money on, and it doesn't work, right? So I'm sort of looking to see what successes are out there. And
especially with KSL, you don't want to be that guy.
I didn't say that. You said that. I came across the Best Western videos that they've been doing, the 360. I don't know if you've been to it. I can't remember. I saw their press release, and I went to their site. Couldn't find it anywhere on their site. And then I realized that it was a separate site. It was actually a YouTube channel that they do it on. And they're kind of neat, but as I started going to some of their destinations, where I think they would get a lot of visitation, there's something like 47 views or something like that. And I think they claim, at least in their press release, that they've done it for all 2,000 properties in North America.
But that's the real thing of treating these things as campaigns, where you go, wait, okay, how do they get to it on the site? Where are the traffic points? Yes, they did the press release, but if you go to the website and it's not there, and if they've done it for every hotel, that needs to get embedded in some sort of prominent way on each of those property pages if they went to that extent.
Unfortunately, a lot of people with shiny object stuff like this, it's like putting a note in a bottle and throwing it in the ocean thinking that you're going to get it to the recipient on the other side. It's not. You don't do it with that. You do it with an objectivity in mind of satisfying the content of the person that content is most interested to. You give it to the person, kind of like going to the example I had. We gave it to people we knew were interested in the content, not just like, hey, look how we did this new cool thing that nobody else has done. Here it is. I'm going to throw it up and you got to go find it. It's like, no, you put it into the mainstream of the people that are most interested in the content. So as a part of the program, going back to the conversation of being more direct about attribution and so forth, is you interject the content. I mean, one of the worst things that most hotels do is that they send the same freaking email to the same list over and over and over, and they don't even have the common courtesy to segment them on their duration of stay or their time of stay. That people that stay with you in winter are not the same people who stay with you in July. So why do you talk to them the same? And why do you act like you've never talked? It's like having 40 first dates. Okay, it's like you're starting over the conversation every time you're sending them an email as if you don't know who they are. You do know who they are, at least at the very courtesy level of knowing when they stayed with you. So keep the verbiage related to that. So what you're saying about 360s, first off, it's not expensive. You can buy a camera for $399 and give it to whoever you want to put it on a stick and tell them to go walk around with it. That's what we did to that Sydney thing. That's all that was. It was
or Lauren will do it for you, and he'll do it at a very reasonable place to get to the Maldives and Thailand.
A great sacrifice for me to fly to the Maldives, but I would do that for you, Dan. I would. Wow, yes, sacrifice. Yeah.
Well, but you also have to ask the question of why. Why do this? So why would Best Western do this? And hopefully someone there is thinking this through. So first of all, Best Western has a bit of a problem that they have a lot of properties, and those properties, it's hard to differentiate, them from some of the other brands that are fighting for that space. It's actually a really, really aggressive space right now in the industry. And so, like, if I were to answer why, like if I was Best Western and someone pulled the trigger to make that investment, the first place I'd put it is their any of their social advertising. I'd use that as the medium. Why? Because I look at behavior, and behavior says that, okay, when you're looking at a series of patterns and it's very similar, and then all of a sudden you see the break of, oh, when I moved my device, this image moved with it, the amount of people who will take a peek at it, like, so when you're talking really top of funnel, like, they're not coming and looking at it because you're Best Western, they're coming and looking at it because you were different, and then what's the experience from there? Yeah. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people like really forget. It's not about 360 video, it's what are you going to drive them to?
Right.
And then what kind of funnel are you going to put them in? Like, and what is the funnel to put them in? Like, those are the things to focus on, not whether or not to do it. It's whether or not you're going to commit to that form of, wherever they would be at the funnel at the point that is what speaks to them. How are you going to drive them through the rest of the journey to the ultimate conversion?
It's like when you do a survey. Well, if you get the answer, what are you going to do with it? If you're going to ask the question and you get the answer, what are you going to do with the answer? And if you're not going to do anything with the answer, why ask the question? Same thing with the video. It's like, if you're going to do the video, are you doing it just because you're going to do it differently? Or are you really doing it as a product that's going to be used for what you intended its development for? And here's
the other thing, especially with 360, and Jeremiah says the fun is the funnel, which I agree. If you only put out the initial piece and you don't have a funnel behind it, the only thing you'll learn from it are vanity metrics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting thing, if you get a chance to go to the site and after the call, you
probably go check it out.
They have these kind of cool videos, and they have this really bad, like, 1970s type intro over it. The Best Westerns are the most beautiful hotels, and
that's ownership getting in the way of this stuff. It's like they want their picture of the porte-cochere somehow in the video. It's like, no.
But here's the other thing I'll say to you too is, like, you should only be thinking about those things if you feel like the things that you do currently do, you do incredibly well.
Yeah.
That's one of the easiest ways, like on shiny object syndrome. So if you're thinking, should we do 360 video? The first thing I'll ask you is, do you feel like you do video well?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you don't do video, okay, how's your image?
Maybe not.
It would be more advantageous to get your staffing.
These are the steps. Perfect things before you go to the more elaborate versions of those things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'd add to that also perfect really the persona-based funnels, right? Yeah. Especially for resort, where you can really look at it and say, we are looking at whatever. Yeah, if you're looking at, I mentioned honeymoon. We're looking at honeymooners, or maybe it's vow renewals. Maybe it's destination weddings. I mean, you can break this down really, really finitely, or especially people traveling with children. Because the thing that drives me crazy is somebody goes and does a video, and it's just a mishmash. You go, here's whatever the buddies from college, and here's the meeting space, and and you're just sitting there going,
the buckshot approach. This video will work because it'll speak to everyone.
And it turns off everybody, right? But again, if you get very finite on that, and I mean, ultimately, I think with a 360 video, all of a sudden you do some cool little wedding on the beach on a 360, and they were on the destination wedding page, and they did this. All of a sudden, that stuff becomes really powerful, because I think,
and this is
Lauren's example of that of the VR thing with the cardboard was because they knew these people were on the cusp. They keep going there, and they aren't pulling the trigger because it's a big decision, and what can you do? But that's because they had the data on saying, this is a finite group. We know who these guys are. What can we do to push them over the goal line?
And I think you can start simplistically just in how you do targeted ads to segments. So make sure there are experiences that speak to the ad,
right?
And not just a little bit. Like, go deep. Give them. Take the content that they're going to navigate to, and make sure that the theme of whatever you know about them because of the first thing they did to convert follows through to that, because then you'll learn more about that segment. So sometimes the best way to get good data is to start by kind of guessing on what you're going to get out the other end and building to that, and then test and measure, and then adjust. And then test and measure and adjust. Like, you're never done.
Right.
Before you go into like super sophisticated 360 video, like, I'd rather see hotels that want to play with 360 video do it in the least financially impactful way possible, which is, is there someone on your staff who's interested in it? Great. Go have them take one and put it on YouTube and play with promoting it to see what it does.
Yeah.
Right.
Start small.
Because you have three challenges to the process. One is that you're in a density of market, and this is, I'm just reciting from my experience, brief experience with hotel properties, but they're near you, and then also in Sydney, is that you have to create distinction to whom you are, which I'm preaching to the choir about saying it, but so empowering your staff to give unique experiences or give a unique context to what is maybe not known in market compared to your competitors who are spewing out the same type of content, and that gets translated over into your social strategies. That instead of going over and reciting the same regurgitated kind of content that everybody else is in market, you start defining it according to what Robert's saying, individual topics like soft adventure, off the beaten path, culinary, renewing of vows or weddings or so forth. You start slicing those up and you create long tail storylines in social that will coincidentally apex in discussion at the time that that market segment is the most interested in your market. But it's a long seed. It's not something that you just decide to start springing content out in market because you've already lost them high in the funnel. They're not engaged with you at those platforms at that time sequence. So you have to seed that conversation to draw them into you, where they start isolating their perspective of their engagement to your market from your location, so that even if the price is a variant, or even if there's a reason to think of another property, having to reconstruct that perception is more arduous than just to accept the changes and know that they still want to stay with you.
And fully commit to see what it teaches you. Man, when I say fully commit, like even when they get into your booking engine, like don't show them rates that families don't book if they're family segment. Like really fine tune it, because you can get rid of a lot of the paths that create noise in your data.
And I'm a big fan in the booking engine. And again, a lot of booking engines don't enable this, but yeah, show them pictures of families in that room, where it's quad occupancy. That's what they're looking. That's great stuff, because they can start, picturing themselves.
Yeah, not just
the one. I'm sorry, Lauren.
No. Go ahead.
No.
I was saying
the one you're supposed to speak over us.
The one thread that that I hear through the whole conversation today is personalization, and the need to focus on that, and we're working on that, but it's hard.
It's hard. Wait. It's hard when you try to drink the ocean. Start where you can start. There are people who make it to you where you already know why they're coming to you. Start there. And that can be static personalization, where like this is the experience that newlyweds and weddings and nuptial based advertising drives to. And this is where, people who clicked on an ad with family in it, this is where they drive through. And just start by having all the content flow and fit to that. Mm-hmm. And even then you go like a step further, like, okay, so for family, let's segment older kids, younger kids.
Right.
Now let's branch them. And then it's like, oh, wow, then start doing cross tracking to see that, hey, these people who ended up here were also here. And that's how you can start designing behavioral based personalization, where based on steps they take, you take what you learn and you start adjusting. Like that's the thing where like I think most people are trying to go, but you can start super duper simple, which is entry point. Start with that. That gives you a theme. And then that also sharpens your advertising to be more focused.
Yeah. And that is something we do. We try to land people on relevant pages, whether it be a special or, like you said, a family or something like that. But going to that next level of identifying, number one, whether it be a persona or any sort of information you have about the person, and then to dynamically serve them up the right content is a whole, technology issue. It's a tracking issue.
It's a content issue.
Yeah, there's a level of complexity, and we're moving towards that. Our CMS platform has a robust personalization aspect to it, and we're starting to test it. And as you said, we're starting really small. We're making sure that people coming in from Australia are not getting local Hawaii ads, right? So super simple, right?
Yeah, like show pictures of utes parked in your parking lots.
Yeah.
And,
just instead of the beach, we have a picture of a bottle of beer.
Exactly.
We'll start with geo, and then we'll get down to personas. We'll get down to their click path and all those things. But I still stick with my my generalization. It's hard.
It is hard.
We're working on it.
What's your CMS?
We use Sitecore.
Okay.
Which is fairly robust CMS, and we use when we talk about the booking engine, I'd love to do some more stuff in there, but as a small company, we used to have our own booking engine. There's all sorts of issues with having your own booking engine. The not the least of which is the inability to keep up with all of the changes, little things like mobile and things like that. But when you go to a third party, you're sort of handcuffed a little bit in that you can only do what they can do, and you can try to push them to get on the development calendar and all that. But we work with Synexus, who we like, and it's a solid booking engine. But there's tons of stuff. We're still seeing 60% of our traffic coming in, and only this much actually converting there. Why? It's a pain in the ass to fill out a form. Nobody's going to do that. Right. Why can't you use a fingerprint to put in all your information? And I guarantee you it would go through the roof. If that was my booking engine, that would be the first thing I'd be working on.
Just Dan, so we have Jeremiah that's they added a question. What different service perks do you add to different travel segments, if any? And then I have a few people that have a couple questions off of Periscope we'll get to after Jeremiah's, then I guess. And to remind you too is that your half hour of us attacking you.
You're off the hook if you want to. You're off
the hook. But
right.
So anyway, if you want to, Jeremiah's question: what different service perks do you add to different travel segments, if any?
I think on the consumer side, it's very limited, except maybe potentially discounts for certain segments. Within our loyalty program. We do a lot of promo code driven campaigns to our database of past stayers and things like that. We do on sort of, we talked about the hidden loyalty program. We do a surprise and delight program where we try to ferret out which is not easy because we don't have a robust database at the moment. Good customers or customers who are high up in the social food chain and do nice things for them. Probably there's a huge opportunity in the consumer space to do more of that. Certainly in the trade space, we do lots of that. For our preferred travel agents, there's all sorts of things that we would give their guests when they check in, as well as on the wholesale side. There's all sorts of different things that are baked into agreements with them, groups and things like that will do different things. Everything from breakfast inclusions to I can't think of any other off the top of my head, to nice stuff in their room, baskets and things like that.
Two things I want, before I forget, to just offer, and then I have a question from a woman in Curacao, Marie, which is nice. Was Facebook dynamic ads for travel? Have you messed with that? And have you worked in any of the, and I don't mean to keep it to strictly social, but since the demographic profiling is so cool with it, doing lead ads with Facebook? Because it answers a couple of your questions. One, with lead ads, you don't have to fill in the fields. Boom, they just hit a button. I'm interested. Give me more information, especially in the discovery phase where you can send them a whole mess of why you want to come to Hawaii kind of stuff and stay with you. So you can do aspirational lead ad gen on it. And then the Facebook dynamic ads, of course, being able to trigger outside of the hub markets for airlines and so forth. And that's where Maria's question is coming from. How do you isolate? It allows you to isolate interest categories in feeder markets to the hubs that get to you. And so I didn't know if you've been messing with those. Have you been messing with either of those at all? Or
we haven't done the lead gen at all. We're starting to test the dynamic, but so it's way too early for us to determine. I know as a user, that stuff is very powerful. So, my assumption is that there are other people like me out there. So I am excited about that. And just getting it launched is what we're working on right now.
Okay. Marie from, okay, go ahead, Robert.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying, so
do the Curacao ones because I was going to come back to the new Facebook features, which was one of the news items, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can jump to it too if you want. Marie's asking, she's trying to say, it's great. I know where my flights are coming from. being in Curacao, there's certain hubs, Miami. How do you have any techniques of how to determine where they fly into Miami before they get to me? She's asking in her context. I guess what she's asking is there a way that you can determine where people are flying into to fly to you to better target your marketing?
Absolutely. We get may not be weekly, but we get very regularly airline reports. The Visitors and Conventions Bureau here is fantastic with supplying that level of data. We are, our economy is built around tourism. Actually, probably all of the destinations we operate in, our economies are built around tourism. So we are very careful to look at that data. Obviously, that helps us pinpoint where we want to focus on. But beyond that, we get geo data from the Convention and Visitors Bureaus, actually in all of our locations, that gives us a good idea of where our people are arriving from. Obviously, there's most of these big carriers work on the hub and spoke. So even though they're coming from LA, they're potentially coming from all over the place. But we do try to nail down where our customers are coming from. From Hawaii, it's amazing. West Coast is the lion's share of it. From the Pacific Northwest, California is the biggest. Canada has gone down. From Australia, we have lots. Although the big one is from Sydney, but most of the people are from all over Australia who are coming into the destination. But when you look at a destination like Thailand, it's amazing. When I first asked to take a look at the geo report, it scared the crap out of me, because not a single market had more than had double digits. You had 50 markets all at 2%. It had a healthy market. Gosh. How do you market to something like that, right? So it is easier, I think, when you're in a fly-to market to determine where your people are coming from. But it's still the challenge, especially when it's fragmented, to get to that market.
I was, so we probably entered Hawaii as a company like 2 years ago, and we did it kind of cautiously because we weren't sure what influence would do in such a commitment of a trip. And we were shocked by the booking window, how short it can be for Hawaii. Like, just going into it, knowing Hawaii because of previous things I did, I always kind of looked at it and said, man, this is kind of a big trip. Like, this isn't, this is like an Orlando type trip, a Vegas type trip. There are people who spend a very long time thinking about this, but I was surprised by how many people can be just swayed, like, come now. That kind of shocked me. As we grew out in Hawaii, we saw it consistently. It wasn't just with the initial customer. We saw it continually. That was something that really surprised me, because I always thought Hawaii was a much bigger decision than, going to like San Francisco, or it's like.
But that's maybe for LA, San Francisco. So, yeah, just those gateways, gateway cities. Probably maybe not people who have to go connect in, or East Coast and that sort of thing, right?
It just surprised me, the volume of people that have made the decision because of someone else so quickly. Like, I figured we'd see a lot more in the long tail, but we're actually seeing more in the medium side of decision path to like our statistics. And that's what surprised me, because I figured with Hawaii, we were going to skew even further to long tail than what we normally do for customers. And I'm pretty surprised that it wasn't as big of a shift as like I was actually thinking our aggregate shift of time from our engagement to decision would skew by months, where it was literally like weeks. Yeah. And that really surprised me about what you can do with Hawaii.
Yeah, I'm from New York, so the idea of Hawaii in my mind is a long trip, but
right.
From to Robert's point, from a West Coast perspective, this is their Puerto Rico, this is their Caribbean. It's not if they get a good deal, they may fly out here. And it's strangely enough, the Japan market as well, has become so mature here that if they get a good deal, they may pop on a plane and swing over here, believe it or not, for a weekend. So it definitely has changed over the years.
And tour operators have been all over that for a long time because they know the price point at X, whatever it is, $6.99 or $7.99, whatever that number is. They know if it's $3 higher, doesn't happen. But boom, this time, this booking window, and it turns on. Yeah, it's amazing. Same Mexico from Texas, even in the summer. Yeah, Houston, Dallas, just incredible. Yeah, here's an offer, and people getting the heck out, and not necessarily getting out of the heat.
No, they're not escaping the country. They're they're reverse migration.
Exactly. Exactly.
Being mindful of the time, because we first off sincerely appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
And I mean, this has been awesome, dude. Really, it's been fun talking with you, seeing you. Knowing that we're going to see you again next week, sans the beard, but still nice to see you with the beard and all. But don't want to eat up too much of your time by just you being polite to us. Do you have a little bit more time to hang with us, or because I mean, we can keep talking about you all day long because there's so much fun things to talk about for it. We can throw in other stuff. You want to get off the hot seat a little bit, and we can throw in some news topics for it, or you want to go over and start your day, which you've already started kind of early. We know
and just remember,
is restocked though. We do know that the refrigerator is restocked behind you because we watched her put in a whole mess of stuff. So
she's got you
are good to go.
That's the breakfast. Maybe I'll take a walk out to Old Nine and give you a view of the background.
There we go.
But no, if you like to stay with us, please.
What time do you guys usually finish? Is it another time?
Whenever most of us have appointments and just say, "Hey, we got to end."
On average, we run for about 2 hours. We're already an hour 15. Just boop,
at one point, one of the feeds cuts off at 2 hours, so we try to
keep it under 2,
so we don't have double feeds.
Because what happens is this is recorded, so after 2 hours, it splits into another recording, which makes me have to splice them together, which sucks. So I try to keep it under 2 hours.
Well, I'd love to wake up early and join you guys again in the near future. I probably should get in my car and head over to the office about now, but it really was fun. So thanks I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, we appreciate making the time.
Awesome to be here. I'd say if people want to find out where you are, but being in Hawaii, you already have enough people that already want to know where you are. And if you give them your email, they're probably going to want to know even more who you are. So you don't have to give anybody any information about how to get in contact with you. But if they would like to stay at the resorts, what would be the best way for them to come to the resorts?
Outrigger.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to link in to me, feel free to shoot me an invite.
A couple people, one on Periscope. Go for Jockey, who hangs with us on every one of the show. He says, "Thank you so much for taking the time." He is going to go look because he's thinking about going to Hawaii. So who knows? Maybe that was worth one booking. But
we have turned into a conversion engine on this show. That's unbelievable.
Let's see if we have any other residual quote. Maria says, "Thank you. Great information. Best of luck." Yeah. Okay. So everybody's saying thank you. So.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. See you in New York.
Thank you,
and thank you so very much for the time.